Good afternoon. My name is Philip Bane. I'm the Managing Director of Smart Cities Council. Today we have with us Rick Ralph, the CIO of Morrisville. Rick, raise your hand. I think people can see. Billy Whitehead, our Smart City Manager for Morrisville, and Janet Rives, who is responsible for corporate strategy at Bridgestone, with Bridgestone being our sponsor for this collaborative acceleration, which is about data sharing for mobility solutions in North Carolina's Research Triangle. So we're going to do a brief intro from our host, and let's go.
I am Mayor TJ Cawley, and I bring greetings from the Morrisville Town Council, the residents of Morrisville, and the entire Research Triangle region of North Carolina.
Philip, we can't see him.
Cities Council for selecting Morrisville and the Research Triangle as a 2021 Readiness.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
We're not seeing the video.
Okay. I told you guys we were informal and we would. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I am Mayor TJ Cawley, and I bring greetings from the Morrisville Town Council, the residents of Morrisville, and the entire Research Triangle region of North Carolina. We applaud the Smart Cities Council for selecting Morrisville and the Research Triangle as a 2021 Readiness Challenge winner. We are honored and grateful for this exciting opportunity to engage and collaborate as a region and gain valuable insights from technology experts. This year, the town of Morrisville was recognized as an All-America City. Last year, Money Magazine selected Morrisville as the 10th best place to live in the nation, and Niche.com recognized us as the very best place to live in North Carolina. These are just a few of the accolades that Morrisville has earned in recent years. Our residents are proud of the unique qualities and diversity that make Morrisville one of the best places to live in the entire United States. Morrisville is located in the heart of the North Carolina's Research Triangle region, a cluster of more than 2 million residents and 7,000 companies in multiple industries, including ag tech, clean tech, life sciences, manufacturing, and technology. We are delighted by the opportunity to collaborate with other cities and towns during this Readiness Challenge. Morrisville residents routinely voice their desire for improved connectivity, and 88% of residents in the most recent National Citizen Survey support roadway and transportation improvements. Town Council prioritized this feedback, and we continue to support various ways to create better traffic flow in our town. We understand the urgent need to connect people to jobs, education, and other important destinations with multimodal transportation. Regional transit planning is important because traffic does not stop at city limits. Effective transportation solutions require innovation, and regional data sharing is vital for informed decisions. All Morrisville Town Council members fully support this regional project. This Readiness Challenge will enable the Research Triangle area to develop a data sharing roadmap that we expect will lead to valuable outcomes for our region. We owe a big thank you to our hardworking staff for their leadership in this effort, and we again thank the Smart Cities Council for this opportunity. Our community looks forward to the benefits of regional cooperation. Together, we will shape a brighter, greener transportation future.
So thank you, everybody. That was the mayor, TJ Cawley. And for any of you that were part of our Smart Cities Academy last week, you were introduced to him. He was very enthusiastic about, we had a session on resilience, and he gave us a lot of good information about what Morrisville is doing. So as I said, we have Bridgestone with Janet Rives. We have Morrisville with Rick Ralph and Billy Whitehead. And I'm going to kick it off with just a few slides explaining what our program is about and how possibly you as a city in the US or North America could participate. So this is just briefly our schedule. I'll talk a little bit. Janet Rives will talk a little bit about Bridgestone's future in the mobility sector. We'll get Rick and Billy to talk about their overview of the vision for the Research Triangle Mobility Data Sharing Project, and then we'll go from there just into the schedule. So roughly this will take about 40 to 60 minutes, somewhere in there, depending on questions. And if you do have questions, feel free to include them in the chat. I think Zoom has taught all of us that questions in chat are totally a great way to get involved, and we'll take every effort to answer as many questions as we can. So with that, let's go on to telling you a little bit about what this is all about. We at the council have been producing the Readiness Challenge now for 5 years. We were invited back in 2015 by the White House to produce the first Readiness Challenge, and we've done it successively every year since. In 2019, we moved from an annual challenge to a quarterly challenge so that we would have winners every quarter. And it's because of that that we announced Morrisville and the Research Triangle as a winner just this month for the fourth quarter of 2021. So our current winners are Nashville, and for many of you that probably participated in the last year, because we have about 12 sessions about urban flooding. We started last year, and the goal is to have an in-person scoping workshop in December around mitigating the impact of urban flooding on vulnerable populations. For those of you that are familiar with our work with Orange County, we had a scoping workshop on July 24th, actually in Orange County, in Orlando. We had I think we had almost 60 to 70 people, about 40 in the room and 30 on video participating in. Orange County has 4 different divisions that manage their 600 plus buildings, and we had them all in the room, and we were talking about how they could share information going forward and what the scope of many of their projects were. And for those of you that know something about Orlando and Orange County, they have the second largest convention center in the world. Now, just added to that is Orange County has asked us to conduct a similar workshop on transportation. Tentative plan is for December, but it would be very similar to the work we've already done with Orange County. For those of you that are familiar with the fact that we are a global entity and that we have councils in India and Australia, New Zealand, Brisbane and Queensland was also one of our winners this past year, and we've been conducting a series of workshops with them. And then as we announced 2 weeks ago, North Carolina Research Triangle, led by Morrisville, is our next winner. And here the project is around data sharing for mobility. So what does this mean? Our goal is to invite cities to review their projects with us. For those of you that may not be aware of this, most cities in the developed world take about 4 years from the time of concept to implementation. In the developing world, it can be 15 to 17 years. Only about 11% of all the cities in the world can fund their own projects. So we think that the 2 biggest issues that cities face are, 1, capacity development. How do we understand the technology and how do we implement it? And then 2, how do we finance it? So our goal with the Readiness program is to accelerate both of these, to accelerate project implementation and then to help and accelerate, whoops, even I could see that, accelerate the financing of these projects. And the way we do it is we have these, it's a hybrid situation. So we have these virtual webinars like we're doing right now, but they culminate in an in-person webinar where, I'm sorry, it's hybrid, but it'll be mostly in person, where we get together with the city or cities and we actually scope out some of the solutions that they could use to solve their problems. We use a platform called Smart Cities Activator, where we collect information and we share it. And the goal with both these webinars and the scoping roadmap is to share this with other cities. We have found often that since these are public, that we'll have anywhere from 10 to 40 other cities participating, listening in. And so we fully encourage you to ask questions and participate as much as you're able. So this is really about engaging with leadership at every level. So yes, we have mayors like John Cooper and TJ Cawley and Mayor Jerry Demings of Orange County. But I do want to note that we make every effort to bring in every level. So we did a session back in May for Infrastructure Week about data for well-being, where we had many different people from Nashville and Orange County. We had sustainability and resilience officers, we had innovation officers, we had data scientists, we had the assistant director of water department for Nashville, we had a representative from Vanderbilt University, and we had a couple of experts, one from Australia and one from upstate New York, Dr. Mariella Afonso. But the idea here, and along with that, we also had one of the world's largest water companies, Census, with Dr. Christine Boyle announcing a Water for Equity program. So the point here I'm trying to make is that it's not just about rah-rah speeches and people thanking us for doing things. It's actually getting down and doing the work by bringing many of the leaders, the operative leaders within a city together. So this is just a list of all the winners we've had in the past 5 years. You can see that they extend from the state of Virginia, where I live, and no favoritism there, guys, and to many other cities, many that you recognize, some probably that you're surprised. I think we're seeing, actually Morrisville is actually our smallest winner. Racine was the other one that was a smaller city. So as you can tell, we really make an effort to, across the board, bring in many different cities. So Janet, why don't you talk a little bit about Bridgestone and why you guys are interested in this and where you're going with mobility?
Great, thank you, Philip. I want to thank everyone for being with us today and appreciate this opportunity to talk a little bit about Bridgestone and our efforts to get into mobility solutions. If you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. Just to introduce Bridgestone and who we are. The company was founded in 1931. It's a Japanese company with a foundation of really serving society with superior quality, and that has never wavered over the years. In 1988, we had the acquisition of Firestone. So Firestone Bridgestone is one company and became a truly global company at that time. We have 138,000 employees around the world. We have 2,200 service centers. You may see Firestone Auto Care throughout the states, and we have 2,200 of those stores or cell phone stores around. And then just this past year, our new CEO launched what he called Bridgestone 3.0, and it's to turn Bridgestone really into not just a tire and rubber company, but a solutions company to provide societal and customer value as a sustainable solutions company. And that's really understanding how mobility solutions works together with sustainable efforts as well to provide the future of mobility. Go to the next slide. And so that's really thinking about end-to-end solutions of when we look at a car, that it's not just around the tire itself. I mean, a car is not a car without tires, it has to roll. And so how do we take what we know and understanding that tire vehicle data and smart sensing technology into analytics that provide proprietary information back to the yard so that it can see and predict problems before there's a problem, especially when we talk about forward thinking freight and the way that freight movement these days has to be more technology savvy, bringing goods and services into the city. And then of course, service delivery, doing accident prevention and being able to sense when there's a problem coming or having the ability to service when there is a problem more readily. So we're looking at how to provide more technology, more forward thinking, more sensing and predictive analysis into the vehicle itself. Go to the next one.
So Janet, from Philip here. So essentially then you're looking at the components that you supply in the automobile and starting to see them as sensors. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and then the idea is how do you collect the data and use it?
Absolutely. And
Right.
so
Okay.
understanding, really a fan of open sharing data. I mean, that is one thing that we get asked all the time. Does it have to be with your tires? No, not necessarily. And so really trying to understand, one, we just acquired a company called Azuga out of California with a high-tech telematics platform that allows us even to work in different areas, such as with Nashville, we've been talking about a smart corridor here in the city where they have still cameras on poles, but we could actually install cameras within the vehicle to help connect the data to better understand driver behavior along with what's happening in the infrastructure. And so those are some of the areas that we're very interested in accident prevention, but also in driver behavior and how that lines up with what they're seeing on the road. So when we talk about a smart city, these are the 8 pillars that we see of how smart cities are developing, and the areas that are our strengths today are around the smart environment and, of course, smart mobility and transportation. And that comes into the data exchange and connected assets, understanding better the big data, the data platforms, the IT servers, understanding just who all is involved when it comes to tech, of how do we take this data and use it for good decisions and be able to act on them. And then enabling our innovations, as we talked about with Azuga, we have a tire called IntelliTire that can sense tire pressure problems before they happen, but also looking at the Internet of Things and sensors of things that can help us predict issues sooner. And then, of course, physical layout of cities and infrastructures that you are working on. And one reason we're here is to learn from you and understanding that just as we develop things for the car, and you're developing infrastructure for your citizens to move around in their cars, working together produces solutions easier and better, and we can co-develop things a lot easier. So if you go to the next slide. And just to let you know that this is not just Janet Rives sitting in Nashville, Tennessee by herself. We actually have a global team that's focused on smart cities. And so we have a group in EMEA and also in the Asia Pacific and in Japan, which we come together and share our learnings. And of course, Europe is very advanced in smart city technology as well as CO2 reduction. And so we are learning from them. And so our hope is, as we cross-learn around what we're doing around the world, is we can learn from each other and execute faster so we can help folks just as yourself. So that's a little bit about us and how we're involved in this. And I thank you very much for allowing us to be part of it. Look forward
Thank you, Janet, and thank you again. And we really appreciate your sponsorship of this. So it's going to be interesting because I know there's a lot. You've been really willing to learn a lot, and we've had a lot of discussions. And I think we will, one of the things for people who aren't familiar with these collaborative accelerations is we keep them somewhat informal. We ask questions and we keep people on the screen because it's not a bunch of people talking to a camera. It's really about talking among ourselves and trying to solve problems. So we really appreciate that. So now let us, Billy and Rick, I'll go to yours. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Awesome. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Janet. Awesome things to hear what Bridgestone is doing in this space. It is a pleasure to be in front of you. Again, my name is Rick Ralph. I'm the CIO of the town of Morrisville. We've got our Smart City Program Manager here with us, and Billy Whitehead. We'll be tag teaming the presentation today. Just give a little background on myself. I've been in this role for just over 3 years now. I've been in local government service for about 10. Was brought here to kind of lead our smart city efforts and kind of identifying what it means to us and where we go from here. I would like to thank our council and residents for their support throughout this process. It does make our jobs easier when our community supports what we do, a lot more meaningful. I would like to thank the Smart Cities Council for selecting Morrisville in the Research Triangle as a Readiness winner. I would also like to thank all of our regional partners for their willingness to collaborate and work towards a better and smarter region, as well as Bridgestone for their sponsorship of this series. A lot of knowledge being brought to the table from them, a lot of innovation within their company, and we're grateful for their interest in this subject. Want to give a little background on the Research Triangle. For those that are not familiar, it is located in central North Carolina, and it is just a collection of counties with just over 2 million residents. We have about 7,000 plus companies, of which more than 700 are international companies. The name from the region comes from our 3 anchor Tier 1 research universities, Duke, NC State, and UNC Chapel Hill. Just over 12 colleges and universities and 8 community colleges. The Triangle does claim the 4th highest concentration of PhDs in the country. With that being said, there are high expectations of those of us in the region to innovate and collaborate, which are key drivers of the area's success in general. Real quick, I would like to recognize our regional partners that have committed to joining us in this effort to improve access to mobility and begin to address challenges as a region. We have the towns of Apex and Cary, the city of Raleigh, Wake County, the Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority, and the Triangle J Council of Governments. Their willingness and desire to positively impact the region is what truly makes me proud to call this my home. Next slide, please, Philip. And just to give a little more background quickly on Morrisville, our mayor did cover a good bit. We are a town of about 30,000 residents and only about 10 square miles, so we are a relatively small municipality. We are fast growing. Just in the early 2000s, we had just about 5,000 residents. We are centrally located in the Triangle and are a very diverse community. With over 40,000, or with over a 40% Asian American community, Morrisville is one of the most culturally diverse small towns in America. We did include our All-America City logo. I don't think I'm allowed to do a presentation now without mentioning that we were a recipient of the award. It is a tremendous honor. It does recognize us for inclusive civic engagement and creating stronger connections among the community. Next slide, please. We do have a young, highly educated population with more than 65% of our adults over 25 having a bachelor's degree or higher. Again, our residents are tech savvy and have a high expectation when it comes to service delivery from our government IT. And these are the expectations that drive our commitment to innovation and in part why we are here today. Next slide. Before I get into where we hope to go with the Readiness Challenge, I want to briefly talk about how we got here and our smart city planning efforts that happened beginning in late 2019. In 2019, we did partner with IDC to develop a smart city strategic plan. Our goal was to identify what smart city meant to our community, where we want to go and how do we get there. Smart city was such a broad term. A lot of the players in the space and the technology that was identified as smart city technology either didn't apply to Morrisville or we faced our own unique challenges. So it was important for us to identify what it meant for us before we knew where we were going. Our full plan is published on our website for anyone that is interested. And this is an interactive graphic that shows kind of some of our initiatives. This is a mock-up of our town. We've got our town hall and a fire station, and of course the planes that fly overhead every single day. The plan development started with stakeholder engagement to garner insights on our strengths, challenges, and opportunities. This included sessions with our town staff, town council, and our community at large. Each of our staff brought unique perspective on how the program could positively impact the work that they do and really their overall service delivery. When we were developing strategies for the program, we were determined to build on the work that was already put into developing our town-wide strategic plan. The 6 main pillars or goals of that plan identify key areas based on information gathered during that process. So the 6 strategies of our smart city plan directly align with those 6 goals. This allowed us to create a plan and a strategy that supported the town plan and did not compete with it. At the end of the process, we did identify some top 5 initiatives kind of that would outline and roadmap our short-term future. Given the work that was put into the plan, just the successful implementation of those initiatives would be considered a success. While that was true, we did set forth some key metrics for the success of not only the initiatives, but of the program in general. Just something where we could quantify the impact of the plan and the initiatives that we implement. All right, Philip, next slide. So why data sharing? And you can go back real quick. I just want to talk why data sharing. Early on, we knew that the data was going to be a big focus of our smart city plan and our overall strategy. It was a topic of discussion with nearly every stakeholder group and was determined to be a driver of our program. We saw data as an underleveraged asset. It was overwhelming to understand the amount of data that we're collecting. Is it available? And then the task to understand it and react was a seemingly daunting task. The goal of data sharing is not to pile up on top of our data stack, but to diversify it. With the diversity of data, it's important to understand the big picture. It allows us to do that. This is why data sharing, particularly regionally, is important to the success of projects that are impacted by outside factors from the individual jurisdictions. We share challenges as a region, which is why collaboration is critical to the success in finding a solution and accelerating towards the solution of these common problems. It does go without saying that each of our jurisdictions is better off when our region succeeds. All right, next slide. So we identify data as an important asset. There's some key factors that data can be used. We see data as knowledge, allowing us to make decisions quicker. Good data can give us the justification and evidence to back up decisions that we've already made, or it can allow us to leverage the data to gain new insights to help us make new decisions. I do want to put an emphasis quickly on good data. The data is only valuable if it is clean, accurate, and relevant. In a world with so much data that's collected, we can live in a data fog that makes these decisions more difficult and complicated. So it's important that there's good data to make quick, accurate, data-driven decisions. There was a survey from Deloitte that noted that almost 50% of the respondents said that data analytics helps them make better decisions, and 16% of which said it better enables key strategic initiatives. It does give us the ability to analyze trends to predict future needs. For evaluating performance, it does take the emotion out of evaluating the performance or success of a project or a program. It helps us to avoid making incorrect assumptions and allows us to objectively measure success. For the next one, solving problems. Obviously, data is not going to solve the problems for you, but it does help you identify those problems. It allows us as an organization to identify a problem early and take action to solve that problem before it does balloon. There is no arguing with the data. It is concrete, obviously, unless you want to, and it makes you feel better. If there's not always a problem to solve, there's always efficiencies to gain when looking at the data. The data can help us improve different processes to save time, to streamline those processes. It doesn't always tell us what we're doing wrong. It can also help understand what we're doing well. The insights that we gain might allow us to translate what is working to other processes that need improvement. And the goal of our Smart City program was to leverage data more as an asset to help address those challenges in our community and improve our processes. All right, next slide. So where's the data? Obviously, understanding your data is key. We currently leverage data from really 3 different sources, and we've lumped them into what you see on the screen. The business generated data is data from systems that are used in standard operations. It could be ERP, community development systems, public safety systems. The data is different for every organization, but it is common and normally readily available as part of our data stack. And it helps us to understand those areas for operational improvements. The third-party data is data from third-party organizations outside of our purview. One example of this is the use of a company called Streetlight Data that we utilize for transportation planning. Streetlight aggregates data from smartphones to measure vehicle, transit, bike, and foot traffic. We are able to run segment analysis to understand transportation metrics around Morrisville. And like I said, it's been used in the transportation planning and modeling space and is valuable for analyzing and visualizing that mobility data. The last group of data that is collected is our collected data from IoT sensors that were designed and installed to collect certain data. Example of this is a couple projects that we've recently had at some of our parks. We've installed IoT sensors to gather occupancy and utilization of our tennis courts. We feed that information into a dashboard to show real-time utilization. We have ground moisture sensors in our parks that help us more proactively manage and maintain park and field closures. And then very similarly to what Janet spoke about in Nashville with our smart corridor, we also have smart corridors where we are currently working with utility providers and private companies to spin up some smart poles along those corridors to collect real-time mobility data. All right, next slide. So why mobility? Why did we land on mobility for our data sharing? Well, first, traditionally, infrastructure has been the solution and has been thrown at mobility problems, which is not a bad thing. Obviously, you run out of space and capability, but with the amount of data at our fingertips, it can be used to gain insights and approach these problems in a different way. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish with everything we do is don't just do something because it's what we've always done. Approach it in a unique way and think outside the box. Mobility is something we hear about often. You heard our mayor state that 88% of our residents in the National Citizen Survey supported roadway and transportation improvements. This was also the single biggest challenge that was identified when talking with our residents during community listening sessions as part of our smart city planning efforts. And I'll pull up real quick, just something from our transportation planning department. Just wanted to read a quote from them. Transportation networks, by their very nature, connect people to many places, and therefore their challenges and solutions often go beyond individual municipal borders. These challenges and solutions must be comprehensive, considering bicycle, pedestrian, and public transportation networks, in addition to traditional vehicular supported transportation networks. Multimodal regional transportation data is extremely important for planning and comprehensive transportation networks that offers options for individual residents and supports a more sustainable transportation network. Having access to multimodal regional data will increase the opportunity to have conversations about these topics and facilitate creative, collaborative, and comprehensive transportation solutions. So outside of IT, we're seeing a big interest in data sharing, particularly around mobility, and an interest in how we can use this data to be smarter, how we can utilize this data to better serve our residents. And that's why we're here in public services, to serve our community and make the lives of the community, the residents in the community, better. So I want to hand it over to Billy to discuss some of the numbers and whether or not we're seeing improvements in this area as a region around mobility.
All right, Philip, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, well, when we think about mobility, the number one thing that we need to take into account is kind of the current landscape of the area, the situation on the ground, if you'd say. The Raleigh metro area, it's composed of several surrounding towns and cities, and mainly it encompasses about 1.39 million people in total. The area has grown about 23% since 2010. It's outpacing many other large metro areas, just to name a few: Phoenix, Arizona, Dallas, Texas, and even Orlando, Florida. There's only one place above us, and that's Austin, Texas. Right now, we are ranked second as the fastest growing large metro area in the US with a population of 1 million plus. So we are growing, and we're growing fast. North Carolina's population, it's grew by 904,000 individuals over the same time period. So that's about over a 10-year time period. That was an increase of about 9.5%. That's faster than the national growth rate average, which is 7.3%. Of those 903,000 individuals, or 904,000, according to the census data, 901,000 of those were adults. So that does not include very many kids coming as part of that new population. And that was an increase of 12.4% of the adult population in North Carolina. And then if we can extrapolate from that, most of those adults probably come with additional cars, vehicles, bikes, things of that nature, everything that adds to transportation and mobility around. So that's compounding the issues even more. And as they come in, that's going to cause more swelling of our roadways, which are already pretty large and robust and are already constrained. And as our citizens have noted to us through most surveys, transportation is our number one issue that we need to address. The American Community Survey of 2019 also found that the average commute time in North Carolina has increased to 24.8 minutes, which is about a 10% increase from the previous survey. The national average is about a 27.6 minutes across the US, so we are gaining on that national average and will soon surpass that. Compared to the previous results of the survey, for commutes over 60 minutes in length to work, that's increased by a 24% margin from the previous survey. So people are tending to move further and further away from their workplace, but are still commuting. We anticipate as the population continues to move for jobs or colleges to the area, the travel times are going to continue to increase and shift unless there is more work from home or other types of systems implemented, such as mass transit rail systems or things in that nature. If you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as the metro area continues to grow, so does the need for a transportation cohort to share that information. We envision talking with subject matter experts from around the area, from our various members of the cohort, to assemble a dream list of their data points that they would need or like to have to make the most informed decisions possible. Based on that list, we can work towards figuring out ways to gather that information, whether that is through partners such as streetlight data, or exploring creation of sensors in new and innovative and imaginative ways. Everything just starts with an idea. If if we can assemble that dream team to come together to create that list of data points, we can try to make it happen. And that's kind of what our entire new world is about, is trying to see what today's problems are and coming up with a way to measure it, create a metric around it, and trying to solve it. And that's what my job is. So if we can get that conversation started, then we can work on ways of making it a reality. Until then, one of the tools that illustrates why traffic is best handled with a group approach is by looking at the AADT, which is the annual average daily traffic that passes any specific point within a city or within a road during a day. So if we look at this slide a little bit, we'll go over it briefly. On one of our major thoroughfares on Morrisville Parkway, for instance, in Cary, before it becomes part of Morrisville, there's about 12,500 drivers daily going along that route. But by the time about 2 miles down the road, it transitions over to Morrisville, it's at about 18,000 riders at that same road, just 2 miles difference. So that kind of shows why there needs to be a combined effort between municipalities, between different systems, because if this was going from Morrisville to, say, RTP, or going from Morrisville to RDU Airport, the influx would be much of the same. So we need to combine efforts to figure out the issues, see where the issues are, and try to find ways to improve it the best that we can. So if you look just above that road, I'll go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, Billy, and a point to this is a lot of the traffic in the area, especially Morrisville, we see a lot of through traffic. So we get traffic going to the airport, going to the Research Triangle Park, which is a huge, just down the road where a lot of businesses and a lot of people commute to work. So that is why we see an increase and an influx in that traffic and through, particularly through traffic at certain times.
Yep, that's a big factor that plays into all of our traffic woes. And that's another reason why we definitely need to share data amongst everyone, because we all take a share of that traffic that causes the issues. So then if we look at the road that's just above that, that is going to be Morrisville Carpenter Road. It starts out in Cary with about 9,200 daily drivers. And by the time it switches over into Morrisville, it has blossomed into 17,000 or so. So that kind of just highlights that need of why there needs to be transparency and data sharing across different types of modes of transportation. And then this only accounts for actual vehicles. It doesn't include anybody who may be riding on bicycles, or that's walking or running or just getting around town by walking around. So this is only one form of transportation, and we really need to stand up those smart poles in order to help us identify all of the different types of traffic.
And Billy, this is Phil. Am I understanding correctly that, like, on the map where it says 9,200 and it goes to 17,000, that's about 2 miles?
Correct.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's crossroads between the two roads and things like that, but it's trying to understand the flow of the traffic, which directions they're coming to, which direction they're going. Are they going to work? Are they coming from work? There's also major railroad intersections on right before that 9,200 reading. That's one major railroad, and then further down the road there'll be another major railroad that's used pretty much daily. But they cause a tremendous influx of traffic and backing up of traffic, since they are constantly in use throughout the days. And then depending on, of course, how long the train is, how fast the train is going, that all impacts traffic and causes traffic to back up. So if we go to, the other side of town, we also, to our north is Durham, and that has its own influx of traffic that's coming south out of RTP, and that's causing roads such as Highway 54 or Chapel Hill Road to have influxes as well. But we're trying to figure out the best way that we can measure the data of all the different modes of travel and trying to figure out the best way to capture all of that so that it's most beneficial to the entire region.
Billy, Philip again. You probably said it at the beginning, but what was the date of this data?
This data was all from 2019, is the most recent one that the NCDOT put out.
And just anecdotally, have you or Rick, have you guys seen what was it like during the last, let's say, 12 to 14 months? Have you seen a decrease or has it maintained?
There would be a massive decrease since everyone has probably been working from home from this area, since most of it is probably going to be technology and pharmaceutical type jobs. So most have been home for the time being, and along these roads has been major construction. So traffic is actually being routed around these roads currently, at least on Morrisville Carpenter.
And we did, there was a study, I think, by Streetlight Data that showed the VMT, the vehicle miles traveled, was back on the mend after the COVID, work from home stoppage. So I think we're starting to see some normalization occur with traffic and transportation in the area. So I don't think it's quite back to where it was pre-pandemic, but we are seeing a shift and a rise in that VMT.
And you've added, if I remember correctly, Apple is putting a new headquarters there, so you actually have more employers coming in, right?
It doesn't
Yes.
get better.
Yes.
I wasn't leading to that, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Not without doing
as
something.
bigger jobs. Yeah, as more jobs come, so will more traffic, more people, longer commutes, crossing many different municipalities and city districts. It's only going to compound the issue more unless we come up with more creative ways to get things and traffic routed around towns. Some car manufacturers, such as Audi, have systems built in where infrastructures that could be stood up by towns and municipalities can actually communicate with vehicles and allow and kind of sync with the vehicle to tell that vehicle whether they need to speed up or slow down if they want to hit all green lights throughout a single roadway. But that's getting highly advanced and it's very vehicle specific by manufacturer. But as that becomes more commonplace.
You can't, everybody has their own estimation about when AV will become, mainstream, but it could be a while.
It could be. It could also be around the corner.
You guys have a public busing?
We do have a shuttle service that's a MAS type service that just stood up where people can reserve rides and go. They would have to walk to some of our stations where they'd be able to be picked up by one of our shuttles and then delivered around town. But that literally, I think that just launched last week, Rick?
Yeah, it was last week. It's an on-demand shuttle service called the Morrisville Smart Shuttle, and there are, I think, a total of 15 different hubs around town that the shuttle does go and pick up. But one of the hubs is the regional transit hub, where you can take that and do the Go Triangle or take it anywhere in the region. So that main transportation hub does allow you to get other places, not just around Morrisville, but around the region as well. So our citizens have had good feedback and good things to say about the Smart Shuttle, but it is a relatively new service, and we're interested to see how and what that ridership is and how that impacts transportation around town.
Is most of the public, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how many vehicles does that account for in your shuttle service?
Right now, there are only 2 in the shuttle service, since it's kind of more of a proof of concept, really kind of seeing what the ridership looks like. I think that will be evaluated and may be adjusted in the future. But obviously, initially, the town just wants to see the impact and kind of who's going to utilize the service.
Thank you.
Is there anything county-wide with Wake County, or is it just?
So it's through Go Carry. So Go Carry is operating the shuttles. The transportation technology for the on-demand scheduling is powered by VIA, and it does have a mobile app where you can go on, schedule a ride, pick up and drop off at the different hubs.
Okay, great.
Okay, and then basically that kind of highlights some of our issues, like the fact that we're talking about data from 2019 instead of, say, being able to just pull up and look at the telematics of what's going on currently. So that's one of the big things. The more metrics we have and collect, the more information and decisions that it could help us solve. So we anticipate our smart pole sensors will give us real-time or near real-time data that we could use to more closely monitor and to get a more robust view of all the factors that are currently in play. We're evaluating different designs, thinking of different sensors that we can outfit the poles with, but trying to make it so that we could mass deploy them around town quickly to kind of have a one size fits all for everything, and then we can always add on with additional sensors as we go through. But once we meet with our subject matter experts to figure out exactly what those metrics are that are the most important for them, then we can handle getting sensors created to do all those measurements and get it all calibrated and tested. And then as we adapt our current practices to solve the issues we are seeing now, that could help the issues of today, but might not take into account what might be coming on the transportation landscape going forward. So we need to consider the future. If you could go to the next slide.
And just real quick before we pass it back to Billy, just a discussion of why we think this change is needed. And Billy will talk about kind of future predictions and kind of why we should kind of anticipate what some challenges might be. In the area, obviously, we're responsible for innovating and approaching problems in different ways. Like I've said previously, and obviously in this time, in this area, it's no longer acceptable to just accept how we've always done it, why we've always done things the way we have, but to really approach these in a different way. And Billy will, like I said, go ahead and talk about some future predictions and kind of outline what's to expect from the transportation space.
All right, next slide, Philip. All right, so the experts, for us, we communicate a lot with the IDC. It's the International Data Corporation, and they made numerous predictions for transportation and mobility moving forward. And the IDC, just a little bit about them, is they have about 1,100 analysts from around the world, and they look at technology and industry trends, provide reviews, insights, and pretty much anything with different types of devices, IoT related and non-IoT related, anything technology, and they can give you their thoughts and feelings about it. So as you heard with Rick earlier in the presentation, we enlisted IDC to help us develop our Smart Morrisville plan because we feel that they were the research leaders in smart cities landscapes. If we didn't feel like the passenger on the road any longer, we needed a solid understanding of where private industry was going so that we can get in the driver's seat and put us in the best position that we could be in. Beyond helping us form from the Smart Morrisville plan, they provided continuous reviews of devices, what's trending in the world, what are some of the actual concepts and future ideas that are going to be coming to fruition that are going to drastically impact mobility and transportation in our area since we are growing. And they predicted that by the year 2023, 60% of all major autonomous vehicle platform providers will begin autonomous goods delivery across the world. That's going to be a lot of new vehicles that are unpiloted, and they're going to be gathering information from roadways, from sensors, from sensing provider companies that already exist, and even talking amongst themselves to stay on the road and make delivery possible. So many large corporations have been testing those autonomous vehicles for the past few years, and even North Carolina legislature has proposed legislation that they're currently discussing to try to make that a reality in the state of North Carolina. Beyond just goods deliveries, they're also predicting that by 2025, 70% of all transit authorities will integrate transportation network company services, which are basically ride-hailing type services like talking to Lyft and Uber. If that becomes a reality, that'll be a lot more on municipalities and stuff to manage, but also that could shake up the whole mobility as a service space. There are just a few other predictions from market professionals about trends that influence traffic demands in the future. There are numerous other technologies that are currently being tested, such as advanced air mobility. Drone delivery is the biggest thing. I know in Holly Springs that they're working with a vendor from Israel to do automatic drone delivery systems. And then that would be a whole nother transportation landscape that we're not even thinking about yet. But we need to bring those into the fold as well, just to start planning and seeing how is that going to impact us, how is that going to impact the current trends, and thinking about those snares that we're hitting today so that they don't exist in the future. Okay, next slide.
So Billy, I mean, I've looked at a lot of these autonomous vehicle predictions, and I think they're way off base, personally, based on my own research. But the lesson for you and Rick is that regardless, whether it's autonomous vehicles, drones, shared mobility, or even just more people traveling because there's more jobs, you guys face a tremendous increase in traffic flow, right?
Correct.
Exactly. There's a change coming. Obviously, we can anticipate everyone is doing predictions at this stage of what the future holds. We don't know, but we do know that it will look differently than it does now. And that is why it's important for us to anticipate, but also set ourselves up now where it is scalable to additional challenges in different spaces in the future.
And it's not necessarily about building more roads, right?
Exactly.
No, it's going to be more like reimagining how we handle things. Just like you mentioned earlier on, if it takes government 2, 3, even 4 years to respond to what's happening today, that's too late. We need to already be proactively thinking about it, coming up with those trend-setting ideas, working with vendors in the private sector to create the sensors for how the vehicles are going to be able to communicate so that we can already be prepared for that now.
No,
What we're seeing too on autonomy is it's going to be driven mostly by freight, especially when you talk not just long haul, but last mile delivery, which is becoming such an exponential growth pattern. When you talk about Amazons and all of those who are driving that last mile delivery of packages, that with driver shortages and so forth, that's driving more push for autonomous in the freight sector. It's going to take longer in the consumer sector. EVs are taking longer in the consumer sector than they've anticipated. So it's just going to take longer to get there. But I think in the freight, mobility of freight, you're going to see advancements move more quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And here, just this last slide, and we'll finish up. And I know we're running low on time, but obviously throughout this process, we'll work to identify goals regionally through subject matter expert engagement, discussions about data standards, data governance, central repositories, and best practices. We're talking to you today, but we're not going to be able to move forward and accomplish if we don't listen to. We do have a lot of great leaders, subject matter experts, and technology experts that will help guide us throughout this process. We hope to answer these questions more in depth throughout the process with the help of our great regional partners, the thoughtful private partnerships, and the wonderful support of the Smart Cities Council. So just want to again say thank you to everyone for their time today. Thank you to Bridgestone. Thank you to the Smart Cities Council. And I'm excited to learn together. Philip.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, we're running out of time, but I was going to ask you, we first got introduced to data sharing in North Carolina on your water management, storm flow, based on our work with Nashville. So that's something we'll bring up later because it is an example of how you shared data. For those that are still on, and these will be shared, just to give you a rough idea of the schedule. We'll meet again on October 27th. We'll have some of the other communities speak. On November 10th, we're going to do a pretty deep dive into what data is available, what Morrisville and other cities are actually using, and where they could get more data. We're going to have some leaders from North Carolina and Virginia talk about what they've seen about data sharing in and between and among governments. And then we're going to have a number of experts talk. We're going to have sort of shared solutions, different ways of looking at data. And then finally, right now, we have tentatively, well, we have scheduled for the week of December 6th, an in-person workshop in Raleigh, in the area, a location to be announced soon. But everybody, we look forward to seeing you again October 27th. And we will publish an article and the video and all the attachments to this webinar on the website. It'll be up in about, if not 24 hours, at least 36. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Rick, Billy, Janet, really appreciate it. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.